Hello and welcome back to Down to the Tyre. Today we're joined by a driver who has won the Porsche Sprint Challenge, driven multiple historic F1 cars, and is currently driving in the British GT Championship. Ahead of racing at Spa this weekend, we were joined by Tom Bradshaw, so we hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tom. We've got so many questions that we want to ask you, but first, on Down to the Tyre, we like to always know, delve into the history of a driver's career and kind of how they got to the point they are today. So we know when you joined the grid for the Porsche Sprint Challenge in 2024, you had a lot of experience kind of going into that. So what championships had you kind of raced in before that previously, and what was your experience in those?
Yeah, so my career's sort of been very stop-starty, to be honest with you. So I've raced every year consecutively for 20 seasons, but I've not done a huge amount of full seasons. So it's been quite stop-starty for a number of reasons, mainly the same complaint of most drivers, budget constraint. But so when I started back in 2006 in Northwest Formula Ford. So I did some Formula Ford 1600 racing. Then I went on to do Formula Palmer Audi when the series was sort of relaunched, if you will, around when Jolyon Palmer was doing it. So I did that in 2007, 2008. And then, yeah, after that, did Carrera Cup. And then since that, I've done all sorts, mainly sort of in and around historics. So I did the Masters Sports Car Championship. I've done some Porsche Club, some Brick Car, GT Cup. Yeah, all sorts of stuff really. Fairly eclectic.
So, just out of interest, what sort of made you decide to do the Porsche Sprint Challenge for the 2024 season?
Yeah, so it was. I didn't really have it on my radar, to be brutally honest. It was actually following a phone call from my old engineer and good friend Jules Westwood, who's running Torre Verde. So he was my engineer back when I was in Carrera Cup. So he ran me in 2000 and oh God, when was it now? 2009 when I won the Porsche Scholarship, or the Porsche Junior program as it's known now. He was my engineer for Team Parker Racing, and he rang me up because he had a fairly sizable team sponsor, which was covering a substantial chunk of the budget for one AM and one pro driver in the Cayman. So yeah, obviously sprung to mind, and he gave me a ring, and yeah, back I came back onto the sort of national scene really. So it was yeah, it really was out of the blue, and sort of revitalized my sort of passion in contemporary racing really.
Looking back when you were doing that 2024 season, now we know the success that came the year after, but how did you feel at the time that that season went? And now looking back on it, do you feel like it really laid the foundations for that success that followed the year later?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, as I say, I'd not done anything sort of contemporary for a good 10, 15 years, really. So I was really nervous going into it that, could I sort of cut the mustard, really? Was I going to be quick enough? And the early tests that we had were really promising. And I went into it with no real, I wanted to do well, don't get me wrong, but I didn't have any preconceived ideas as to how I was going to go. I wanted to sort of, be up near the front, but didn't anticipate I'd be winning straight away or anything like that. And when the season got off to a better start than I imagined, it was brilliant. So yeah, it definitely did lay the foundations for a more successful 2025. But yeah, 2024 was nice because I didn't have any pressure on myself. I was going in there to do well, but didn't, as I say, didn't have any preconceived ideas. So it was nice to be in there and be relaxed and able to enjoy it for what it was. And yeah, I went into 2025 knowing the pace off the back of 2024, and I could really focus on trying to string the championship together then the year after.
And you did quite a good job, really, didn't you, at that? Lots of race wins, and the championship fight actually did go down to the final race of the season, though, didn't it? How are you feeling prior to that final race weekend at Brands Hatch? And importantly, how did you feel once you'd managed to actually win the championship?
So the first half of the year was an absolute dream. Everything was going to plan. We were really consistent. Yeah, we were the people to beat, really. And I managed, I can't remember the exact sort of points lead that I had prior to Silverstone, but it was a healthy margin. And then yeah, everything that could have gone wrong sort of did go wrong, really. Some of it my fault, some of it not my fault. So yeah, the pressure really sort of unexpectedly mounted up towards the end of the season. So yeah, Brands Hatch. Yeah, I was nervous, but knew that I had, the pace in myself and a good car underneath me to be able to do the job. So tried to sort of remain as relaxed as I possibly could. But yeah, naturally nerves crept in and yeah, I managed to make a complete and utter mess of the start of the last race. In effect, sort of jumped the start. And I think I had to finish something like I can't remember what it was now, maybe seventh or something like that to win the title. But I had no idea whether my jump start was going to give me, was going to land me a penalty. So I crossed the line, and in all honesty, I didn't know whether I'd won the championship or not because I knew I'd messed up at the start, but didn't know whether I had a penalty. So it was, yeah, some mixed emotions really. I just really wanted to know whether whether I'd done it or not. And yeah, luckily I had. And the reason I had is because my parking was that terrible off on the line. I'd stopped about 6 foot short of my box, jumped the start, stopped before my box, and then set off when the red lights went out. So in effect, I'd never actually jumped the start, but it was only due to my terrible parking that I got away with it. So it was a bit of a close call, really. But yeah, it was nerve-wracking to say the least.
You really felt like luck was on your side when you realised that.
Oh yeah, well the thing was as well is obviously I messed up the start and then I got hit into Paddock Hill Bend as well. So I'm at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend, sort of on the lock stops opposite lock, heading for the gravel, thinking, oh, it's all over. And then I managed to sort of continue, but my steering wheel was about 30 degrees out because it had knocked the tracking out at the back. So honestly I thought it was all over, and there was an in-car camera filming my face at the time on ITV, and yeah, everyone was having a good laugh at that because my eyeballs were on stalks. But, yeah, got away with it.
You just led me so beautifully into the next question I had planned because it was about the fact that it is broadcast on ITV, which, as
Yeah,
anyone who watches the Porsche Sprint Challenge will know, many of the rounds are as part of the British Touring Cars support package. So I was curious how important you feel the regular broadcasting is of the series, and how valuable that is for you as a driver.
absolutely. Well, it's you've got something tangible to market to potential sponsors. So there isn't another package in the UK with that sort of coverage. As well as that, the hospitality which Porsche put on as part of the Carrera Cup and the Sprint Challenge is again second to none. They do a phenomenal job of it, and it really does make it a lot easier for drivers to to sell. They've got something to sell to potential sponsors, which is like I say, is tangible. So yeah, it is very important.
That also leads on nicely to my next question, actually, that as a brand, how much I've always wondered with the Carrera Cup and the Sprint Challenge, how much support Porsche actually provide to the drivers and importantly the teams at a race weekend and also outside of that as well.
Yeah, they do. They do an absolutely phenomenal job. So you rock up at a race meeting with either Carrera Cup or the Caymans, and there's part support there. So you've got pretty much every part that you could possibly need in the back of the truck. You've got fantastic technical support there that are at every race meeting. The championship coordinators do a brilliant job as well. Um, Porsche as a manufacturer, I don't know another manufacturer that sort of back their product to the point where there's a warranty on a lot of their items. It's unheard of in motorsport, really. If something goes wrong, generally, you're paying for it. But Porsche are that confident in the product that they put out there that yeah, they're willing to stand by it and support it the vast majority of the time. So yeah, they do a brilliant job. The platform's fabulous. So yeah, it's a brand that I'm closely linked with through my day job as well, through the body shop that we run. So we're a Porsche approved repairer there, and it's yeah, there isn't a brand like it.
You've obviously competed with Toro Verde throughout your time in the Sprint Challenge. Were they therefore kind of the natural choice along with the Porsche when you were looking at your first season in British GT?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't speak highly enough of Torre Verde. All the guys and girls there, they do a fabulous job. Not only that, I race because I enjoy racing, and first that's my first and foremost. I do it because I love it, and I think the people that you surround yourself with as well. It's important that you get along and you enjoy being in their company, and we have a great laugh, and they prepare a brilliant racing car. So it's you know they've been a dream team. They really have. So if I was stepping into GT4, it was in British GT. It was the obvious first choice. So we started talking about it fairly early on, really after winning the sprint championship. So yeah, love them to bits, and yeah, they're doing a brilliant job in British GT with us as well.
And as you've spoken about how you feel the team's done so far this season in British GT, how do you feel you've performed yourself in the first three rounds?
Uh, it's been up and down, I think, at the minute. I think we're finding our feet. So obviously, I've driven the Cayman an awful lot, but in the Sprint Championship, there's a lot less room for setup changes. So, for instance, in the Cayman Sprint Championship, we can adjust ride heights, cambers, tracking, roll bars. That's about it, really. So the dampers were all fixed so that no one could get carried away with, you know, um, massive testing schedules and things like that. Whereas in British GTs, we're allowed to change pretty much anything, dampers, spring rates, the whole roster of things. So there's been a lot of learning to do, which we're still doing. I think we're doing a good job of it. But yeah, there's been a lot to learn, an awful lot to learn. It's the vast majority of my racing's been sort of sprint based. So the way the meetings run is taking some getting my head round. Um, Pit stops. It felt really strange attacking a pit entry for me. I'm used to just sort of trundling around and coming in the pits. You got a lot more to think about, a lot more going on. I think the guys in the team enjoy it a bit more because there's more for them to do. You've got strategy and things like that coming into play. But yeah, it's a learning curve. But I think we're headed in the right direction. I'm really excited for Spa.
And based on your experience in the Porsche, is there any circuits that you feel will bring out its strengths? And likewise, are there any where you feel its weaknesses might be exposed as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously the sort of buzz topic, isn't it, with BOP, and naturally, certain cars are going to come to the fore at different circuits. Um, I'm looking forward to Spa. I think I'm hoping we're going to be strong there. The straight line pace so far has been good. We've lacked a little bit through some of the sort of twistier sections. So yeah, I think Spa, fingers crossed, should be strong for us. I think the SRO, they do a fabulous job. It's really difficult to sort of balance out so many different manufacturers. I really don't envy them that task at all. There's always going to be somebody who's really happy and somebody who's really unhappy. But so far I've been impressed with what they've managed to do in trying to even out the vast majority of the cars, to make it a relatively level playing field. There's a couple of cars that are down the road at the minute, but by and large, yeah, it's I think we should be relatively competitive everywhere.
In terms of obviously British GT, I feel like one thing drivers always talk about is traffic management, whether they're GT3 or GT4, both sides kind of managing each other being on track at the same time. What's your experience been of this? I was going to also ask about the pit stop process, but I feel like we've covered that part, so we can focus on traffic management.
Yeah, no, it is, and um, the majority of the stuff I've raced previously, I've been sort of in the fastest class or nearly the fastest class, So I'm I've been used to sort of dealing with approaching slower traffic. So Silverstone and Alton Park as well have been a bit of an eye opener, really. You've got to have one eye in the mirror and also focus on the race around you. Um, there's an art to letting cars through as well. So you've got to make sure that you're being predictable in where you're putting your car, um, and also not sort of rolling over instantly and letting somebody through where you're going to cost yourself 2 or 3 seconds. You've got to be mindful of that as well. So there's an awful lot going on, especially if if you're in a tight battle with 3, 4 other GT4 cars, and you've got 6 or 7 GT3s coming up behind you really quickly. It can be there's a lot on your plate, a lot going on at once. So that has definitely been one of the biggest things to contend with and learn really. But yeah, it's all part of the challenge really. So it's enjoyable but pretty stressful at the same time.
So, as you've mentioned, the next round's Spa in the British GT season. I was looking at the website today at the entry list, and I've noticed as well they're running with the French GT4s as well. And as far as I can understand it, they were going to be in a separate grid themselves behind both the British GT and GT4 grid. But is there still some concern that they might almost get in the way of the British Championship fight? Or is it going to be kind of nice that there's those extra cars on the grid to race, and perhaps it means that the cars won't be as spaced out?
Yeah, I'm going into it with sort of mixed emotions, really, for those exact reasons that you said. It'll be nice to have more cars on the grid to race against, but by the same token, everybody in the British GTs has got the championship in mind as well. So I think to trip over um, another GT4 car that you're not in the same championship as would be really upsetting. And I think especially so as well for the GT3s. They're going to have an awful lot of traffic to contend with. It's yeah, like I say, mixed emotions. I'm looking forward to racing against a stronger grid in terms of numbers, but yeah, I think my mind could quickly be changed if you ended up in a silly incident with someone you're not in effect racing against. So it's a funny one. I know there's been a sort of lot of opinions flying around surrounding it, but we're just gonna, everyone's being dealt the same hand. Everyone's got to get on with it at the end of the day. So we'll make the best of it, and yeah, just try and enjoy the weekend, really.
I think there's going to be, I think I read it was 55 cars on track, so it's definitely going to be busy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, if it's going to be anywhere, Spa's probably the best place for it to. If it's got to happen, Spa's the best place for it to happen. You've got space, and it's a long old circuit, so 60 cars, is probably the equivalent of having 20 cars around Brands Indy, I guess. It's going to be busy, but not unmanageably busy, I don't think.
Ask about your teammate as well, obviously Ian Duggan. How helpful has he been in kind of your adaptation to British GT and your journey so far? Considering I know obviously he's got previous experience in the series in both the Ginetta and the Lotus.
Yeah, yeah. No, Ian's been brilliant. So yeah, I've had a good number of questions, and it is all very new, and it's not new to Ian. So yeah, he's been really helpful in certain things, sort of with specifically about traffic management and things like that. He's had a lot of good advice to give, and hopefully vice versa as well. I've got a lot of experience in the Cayman as well, so I think I've been able to help him get on top of the car nice and quickly. And he's a lovely bloke as well. So we've been getting on really well together and having a lot of fun along the way, which, as I said earlier, I think is really important. The happier you are, the better you go generally, in my experience. So yeah, he's been a brilliant teammate so far. We're having a lot of fun together.
So another graduate of the Porsche Sprint Challenge GB, who also races in British GT, is Mark Warren. I know he's now in a GT3 McLaren, isn't he? Do you see yourself following a similar trajectory in the sense of moving up from GT4 to GT3, or are you just seeing how things play out?
I'd love to do GT3. So yeah, my sights are set on GT3. The mechanics of that actually happening, it could be a different matter. It's you're talking huge sums of money to run one of those cars. And I'm not massively wealthy, so all my sort of all the funding for my racing comes from sponsors. So if I can raise the interest and try and put a good package together for some of my existing sponsors and some new ones, then yeah, the plan would be to do GT3, but I've got to be realistic about it as well. So as I say, I do it to enjoy it, and if it happens, fabulous. I'll be trying my best to make it happen. But yeah, as I say, it's a hell of a lot of money.
Would you be tempted to go for a Porsche again for GT3, or would you be interested in sort of looking at some of the other manufacturers?
Yeah, I mean, you don't see the Porsche used that regularly in British GT. I know there was one, and I think Team Parker ran one for a little while, didn't they? But yeah, I don't know. I'm quite closely, attached with Porsche as a brand through our business, as I mentioned earlier. So it works really well with some of my sponsors as well, who are sort of associates of our business, because we've all got close links to that brand. So it helps in that respect. So potentially yes, but it depends what sort of deal is on the table as to what car I'd be driving really. So I'm not as long as it's competitive. That's my number one really. I'd drive anything as long as it's quick enough.
Yeah, it always helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Love Porsches. Don't get me wrong; they're my favorite car. But yeah, number one is that we can cross the finish line first. So yeah.
And my final question on the just out of interest on the Cayman is the one that's used in the Sprint Challenge, is that identical to what you drive now in British GT?
Virtually, yes. So there are a few differences in terms of obviously the BOP. So it runs with a restrictor, whereas in Sprint Challenge it doesn't run with an air restrictor. So we're down quite a bit on power. Um, it runs heavier as well. So we've got lead in there again for the BOP, different cambers, things like that. The only sort of physical difference with the car is just the quick fill on the bonnet to enable us to refuel in pit stops. But yeah, in essence, it's identical, just all toned down slightly to allow for the balance of performance.
So, for anyone who doesn't know watching this, you've also competed in a range of different historic race cars as well, haven't you? And I remember, I think one of the first I saw you in was the Chevron B19, which I
Yeah,
think now is over with Mike Hantelon, isn't it? I think it's got a different scheme
correct.
on as well. At sort of this time when you were racing that, were you more interested in historic racing?
I've always been interested in historics. So it's my dad that. So my dad used to race sort of in the 80s, and then he came back to racing in 2005 in classic Formula 3, which sparked my interest. Um, and ever since, we've always had sort of historic cars around us, mainly F3 cars. Um, my dad, since being a kid, as his dream car was always to own a Chevron B19. They were built in Bolton. We're from Bolton, so a lot of his friends worked at Chevron. My father-in-law worked at Chevron in the day as well. So we've got a lot of connections, close sort of connections with Chevron as a brand. and yeah, he's lucky enough to get one. I think it was back in 2019, 2020 now, something like that. So it was rebuilt, and um, he always wanted to run me in the car. So we went and did the Masters European Championship and won that in 2022. But yeah, for the past 20 years, I've always done bits and bats in historic cars. And yeah, hopefully we'll continue to as well. I've done more than I've ever done in the past couple of years, with various bits and Formula One cars and things like that. But yeah, I've always loved historic racing.
Going to ask about the F1, specifically the 1980s McLaren, because I feel
Yeah.
like, a lot of drivers can say they've driven the GT4 Cayman, but far less can say they've competed in a 1980s McLaren F1 car. So how did that specifically that kind of opportunity come about?
Yeah, so it was funny. When I was racing the Chevron, a guy called Steve Hartley, who owns the McLaren, he lives fairly locally to us. So we used to fly model planes and helicopters together and stuff. And uh, when I was racing the Chevron, he always said, when he starts to slow down a little bit and he's, thinking he's had enough, he was going to give me a call and let me drive the car. And I always sort of took it with a bit of a pinch of salt and thought, yeah, yeah, all right, Steve, yeah, sounds great. And anyway, I was on holiday with my wife and kids, and sure enough, he rang me up and said, right, the time's come. I want you to jump in the McLaren. And yeah, I couldn't believe what I was hearing really. So it's an absolutely fabulous opportunity. So went for my seat fit and found that I really didn't fit in the thing. They definitely weren't built for 6'2", 6'2" drivers. So yeah, I was shoehorned into it, and out we went at Silverstone and had a fabulous weekend. And yeah, I've been lucky enough to do a little bit more since as well. But yeah, what a phenomenal opportunity, and what an incredible car to drive as well. Everything about it, from the sort of revving to 10,000, V8 3 litre DFV behind you screaming away. The downforce to produce as well. It's obviously a full ground effect. First carbon fiber tub Formula One car ever developed as well. So yeah, a real piece of history, and just incredibly exciting to drive as well. Just so raw. Yeah, it just makes you tingle every time you get in it. It's yeah, the dream come true.
You've not just driven it, have you? You've driven it quite well, really. You had success at both Silverstone and Brands Hatch recently, haven't you? How different is racing on a grid of 80s F1 cars compared to, the Porsches, for example?
So throughout my career, I've always driven lots of different stuff. So getting in it and adapting, I found okay. I didn't struggle too much with being able to get in it and get on with the job in hand. In terms of how different it is from the Cayman, it's night and day different, really. So um, at the end of the day, they've all got a steering wheel and pedals and four wheels. So a lot of the technique is the same. But obviously the Cayman, you haven't got that level of downforce. You weigh, I don't know, 1,300 kilos as opposed to, 600. You're changing gear with paddle shift in the Cayman, and it's a H pattern gearbox in the McLaren. So yeah, ABS in the Cayman, and no ABS in the McLaren. So the worlds apart. But as I say, you can overcomplicate things, but it's got four wheels, a steering wheel, a go and a stop, and a lot of the techniques do carry over. But yeah, they're different in many ways.
And the Masters F1 grid is quite competitive, isn't it? Quite large grid numbers usually. And they do race all around Europe. So do you think maybe in the future you might do some other rounds elsewhere, or is it mainly just here and there whenever it works for you and Steve?
Yeah. So Steve has been fabulous in allowing me to sort of look at the calendar and sort of pick and choose really, which again is incredible. I always knew I wanted to continue with something in contemporary motorsport off the back of the success in Caymans. So I've been trying to fit in what I can around the British GT calendar, work, a young family. So yeah, being careful to sort of balance everything really. Um, but I'm going out to Assen later on in the year as well, so I'm doing the round at Assen. And I've been doing quite a bit since as well with OC Racing with Martin O'Connell's team. So I've been doing a lot of testing and a bit of driver coaching with those guys as well in various other bits of F1 machinery. So yeah, ever since my success at Silverstone last year, the amount of opportunities I've got in more historic cars has gone through the roof really, which I didn't anticipate or expect. But yeah, I'm certainly not complaining. I think I've driven six or seven other F1 cars since the McLaren, which if you'd have told me that a couple of years ago, I'd have laughed. But yeah, here we are.
I think that specific MP41, correct me if I'm mistaken, but I think won the 1982 Detroit Grand Prix. So, how's it feel to drive a car with such history?
Yeah, I was trying to sort of explain this. I can't remember who to the other day, and when you're racing the car, your brain, well, certainly my brain anyway, doesn't have any capacity left to focus on anything other than the job in hand in getting the car round the circuit as quickly as possible, in tweaking the setup to try and develop and improve it. The time when it hits you is when you're rolling out the pit lane or rolling back in the pit lane, and everything sort of settles down again, and that's when the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end, and you remember what you're driving, and everybody's sort of gawping at this absolutely stunning car that you're lucky enough to be rolling down the pit lane, and that's when it hits you that, my God, this is something pretty special. But yeah, when you're out there, as I'm sort of coming down into Hawthorns, in top at 170 mile an hour, that it's the last thing on my mind is who drove it and what it won. It focuses the mind somewhat on the job in hand.
You mentioned obviously having driven other F1 cars, and this feels really mean asking it because it's such a difficult question, but which one's your favorite that you've driven?
So I love the McLaren. I love the look of the McLaren, the design of it, the the history of it, and to look at is by far and away my favorite. To drive, probably my favorite has been the uh, Tolman TG 185, so the turbo era 1500cc car of Jamie Constable's. Um, that is incredibly exciting and terrifying in equal measures. You've got 100 horsepower, and then all of a sudden 700 horsepower when the boost kicks in. And yeah, we were at Donington Park in the damp, and it was spinning up in fourth gear, up into the rev limiter at that much power. So yeah, that's incredibly exciting to drive, an absolute beast. So hopefully I get another go in that. But yeah, I would say the Tolman.
Terms of obviously the paddocks in, say, the touring car paddock when you're doing the sprint challenge, the British GT paddock, and then the paddock when you're doing historic racing. How different is the atmosphere? Is there anything you kind of notice as a driver?
Yeah, all three are really different, to be honest with you. So um, British GTs were in the garages, so the bubble that you're in is quite different to when you're sort of in an awning in the middle of the paddock, um, away from the pit lane. So I love the feel of the pit lane in the British GT. It's really professional. It's at a high level, and it's nice to feel you're part of the main event. Um, the hospitality that they run is brilliant as well. The Toka paddock with the Cayman Sprint Championship is incredibly busy. So there's an awful lot of spectators there, which always brings a fabulous atmosphere. Um, and you probably interact a little bit more as well with other people in the public there, because you're not sort of in that bubble in the pit garage. Um, so both fabulous in terms of atmosphere, but for different reasons. The historic paddock so much quieter. So there's still, a lot of spectators that go there, but to nowhere near the same extent as British GTs or the TOCA events. Um, it's always interesting to see the cars that are there at the historic events. There's always lots of really interesting kit. Um, Probably a more relaxed atmosphere as well. So everybody's there purely to enjoy it. So it's a little bit less serious. People probably have a little bit more time for each other and things like that. So socially, I think the historic paddock is a fabulous place to be. And yeah, if you're a car fan, then you're going to see a lot of stunning, interesting kit as well at the historic meetings. So yeah, it's they're all fabulous places to be.
So I think the interesting thing I found with the historics is a lot of people think of the contemporary racing, they think large scale, lots of members of the team, large lorries, all that sort of thing. The historic racing is just as competitive, isn't it? And I wonder if you give us an idea of how much goes into a race weekend in historic racing.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the level across the board in contemporary racing in terms of the driving is higher. So I think there's always a top the top three or four, five, sometimes 10 drivers in a historic championship will be, a really good level. And then from there back, can be strong. Don't get me wrong, but the strength in depth generally isn't quite the same. In terms of what goes into running the cars, it's very different. So the modern cars tend to be more reliable. So I think there's less to do in terms of keeping on top of the car, to keep the thing running in contemporary racing. The historics, yeah, they can fight you all the way. They don't want to go around in circles without giving you problems. So the teams have to be much better equipped to act on the hop and repair things and engineer things and keep the cars running reliably. Whereas there's a lot more time and effort going into the finer details of running a contemporary car in British GTs, for example. So equally as busy, but I think the two require very different skill sets from a race team. Um, so yeah, they're different but equally as busy.
Now, at the end of every episode, we like to ask a few quick fire questions, questions that any drivers can kind of give an answer to. So, the first
I
one of
hope so.
those is, what is your favorite track that you've raced on in the UK, but then also abroad?
Okay, so in the UK, Alton Park, um, probably because, well, a mixture of things really. It's probably where I've had my most success. I've done millions of laps around Alton Park with it being my sort of most local circuit. I started there in Formula Ford, so I've got a lot of memories from Alton Park. So yeah, that's probably my number one, and it's a fabulous circuit. It doesn't take any prisoners. If you get it wrong, you know about it. And if you get it right, you know about it as well. It's an exciting place to drive on the limit. Um, and then European circuit, I would say Zandvoort. I love the atmosphere of the place itself, sort of all the beachside restaurants and bars and things like that. We stay when we go in a centre park, which backs onto the circuit. So the family love it there, and the circuit itself is really exciting. There's fast, slow, medium speed, direction change. You can race on it as well. So yeah, I love Zandvoort.
If you can, what's your favorite race you've ever competed in and why?
Oh. Um, Recently, I would say my favorite race was probably in 2024 at Silverstone in the wet. I had a brilliant race with Max Coates and Jenkins, and yeah, came out on top by about, I can't remember, about 4 thousandths of a second, something like that, with the last corner, last lap overtaking maneuver. We gave each other space, only just enough space, all race long, swapping positions, and yeah, that was fabulous. So yeah, I'd say that is probably my favourite race in most recent times. And then um, winning the Silverstone Classic in the McLaren. Obviously did my career quite a bit of good as well. So yeah, that was a fabulous experience racing that car in front of a lot of people and doing so well in it as well. So yeah, I've had past 2 years have been the best 2 years of my racing career, really, even though I've been at it so long. So yeah, any number of races.
Quick fire question. If you could pick any car to drive that you've not driven yet, dream car to race, what would it be?
Uh, um, I would like to race one of the old manufacturer-backed LMP1 cars, so like the Audi R18 or something like that, or the Peugeot. So yeah, one of the sort of manufacturer-backed LMP1 cars.
Brilliant. Well, that's everything we had to ask you. Thank you so much for your time this evening. It's much, much appreciated, and it's been so great talking to you. I'm really looking forward to watching Spa this weekend. So, all the best and good luck.
No, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for asking me on. It's been good fun.